and welcome to our news stream today. We are here with Katherine Grein, who is our LGBT community coordinator, and she is going to tell us about how the VA serves our LGBTQ veterans. And also today is Transgender Remembrance Day. So welcome, Dr. Grein, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for the introduction. So as you noted, I'm our LGBTQ plus veteran care coordinator here at the VA Maryland. And if anybody happens to be joining who falls within the realm of another VA, every VA has a coordinator like myself. Just as a note, I use she or they pronouns as we go into things here. So thank you all who may be viewing this either live or later on. It's great to have a moment of your time here today. So I did want to start off, as you noted, and I apologize for a little bit of the image clipping here on this page, but today is Transgender Day of Remembrance. So this is a day in the midst of our overall month of November that is our transgender and gender diverse awareness month. But today in particular is a day when we commemorate those who have been lost to violence as a result of their identity, particularly their transgender or gender nonconforming identity. So unfortunately, this is something we continue to see, and now including this year, last year, but it was begun initially in 1999 by a woman named Gwendolyn Ann Smith, and that was to honor a friend of hers, Rita Hester, who had been killed in 1998 as a result of her identity as a trans woman. So I wanted to just take a couple of seconds here and ask for us to, in commemoration of this day, take a brief moment of silence to reflect on what the experiences of ourselves or of folks with the kind of a gender nonconforming identity have been, and the struggles that they faced and the immense resilience that they've shown, as well as to just remember these individuals. Thank you for sharing that moment with me, and please feel free to take, as anybody who's viewing this goes out about the rest of their day, to take more time and find more personal ways to engage with this day of remembrance as well. So in the spirit both of this day of remembrance, so thank you again for allowing me to speak here on this day in particular, and in the spirit of our overall Transgender and Gender Diverse Awareness Month, I did want to come and speak about kind of the services that the VA does offer to transgender, gender nonconforming individuals. So essentially gender affirming care here at the VA. Because this is something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize that we do. And our VA as a large healthcare provider does absolutely serve LGBTQ plus individuals and specifically gender nonconforming and transgender individuals as well. And this has been the case for a long time, but it's certainly been a focus within a little bit more recent years as well. And so I just want to spread some awareness of what kinds of services we offer, some that we don't offer, but are happy to support as well, and kind of a little bit about what to expect from us and how to get connected, what to expect from the future. So again, we do offer resources within, if you see the VAMX VAM HCS, that's VA Maryland Healthcare System, what resources we offer for LGBTQ plus individuals more widely. So we do have the Veteran Care Coordination System. That is myself as the Veteran Care Coordinator, and I link in with our national LGBTQ plus health program that began in 2012. Where again, there's an individual in my role at all VAs across the country. And some of what our role includes is to provide guidance on connection to care, and that includes consultation regarding gender affirming processes and providers. So that is something that I do both outward facing, so public facing here with veterans, whether they're already connected to our VA or not, as well as with the providers within our VA. So I'm also happy to serve as kind of a bridge of connection and communication there. Within our VA, we also do provide LGBTQ plus affirming mental health care. Primarily right now that takes the form of individual psychotherapy, although we are working on creating several groups, and there's actually a group that is recruiting right now, the ACT, or Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, for LGBTQ plus veterans. So if anybody's interested, they can feel free to reach out to me and I can connect them to the group leader there. We also do provide our healthcare services primarily end up being centered around gender affirming care. So I'm going to get into some more detail about that in a moment. And I will note my contact information is at the end of these slides here. We'll make sure to share that as well. So if folks are following along later after this event and so are not able to ask questions here during the event, we will absolutely still try to make sure that we can reach out and get those answered, or that you're able to reach out to us.
I have a question.
Of course.
How can veterans who, how can they actually access care, especially if it's not listed in their medical records? Like, let's say maybe people have not announced or to anyone. How can they access specific care if they have not come out to anybody?
Great question. So that is something where if somebody is not sure about how they might want to approach that conversation with any of their current providers at the VA, or if they're new to our VA, they can absolutely reach out directly to me. And either I can help them to navigate that conversation themselves, or maybe able to speak to a provider in question as well. There are also some what are called consults that I can place. So if somebody's interested in a particular kind of care, I may be able to kind of direct them to that care specifically. And that would involve still disclosing a piece of their identity at some point. So again, if that's something that they are concerned about, I'm happy to help them talk through how would they have that conversation, or to connect them into some of our mental health providers. That is what folks can do with them, is to talk through, all right, you know, I'm thinking about this process of coming out. It's not necessarily a straightforward one. So how can I do that with my providers, or with my family, with my friends as well? How do I navigate this at work? So there's a couple of different ways that we can do that. And I'm a good point of contact for if somebody isn't quite sure how to get started in the process. I'm also going to mention a little bit of that specific to gender affirming care when we get there. In general, also, if somebody's interested in mental health care, or they're already seeing a primary care or mental health care provider, there is no wrong person to disclose to at the VA if somebody is comfortable. So primary care providers in particular can help place a lot of the consults that we'll talk about. Mental health care providers often can as well. And sometimes if these providers are not sure if they are the appropriate person to place a consult or to talk with somebody about the disclosure of their identity, they can connect with me as well, as in the provider can. There are also, actually, we're increasing kind of provider-led efforts to speak with veterans about some of these questions as well. So we now do have a system where we ask veterans at some point, whether we're first meeting them, or sometimes this comes around every once in a while in their medical chart, that we're kind of pinged as providers to ask veterans about their sexual orientation. We don't have a similar question right now specific for gender identity, but that is a question that's now being asked if folks are comfortable self-disclosing that as they're first setting up care with the VA. So it's an opportunity to do that. Now, I think the individuals that you're mentioning, or that you're asking about, maybe folks who, you know, are going through this process and hadn't really had that as something that they either knew to tell, or wanted to tell, or felt comfortable telling at their kind of initial connection with the VA. So that does not preclude them from being able to get that changed in their medical chart or with their providers at any time. Thank you so much for that question. Yeah. So great ways to get connected are speaking with me or primary care. Often that's kind of our initial entry route for folks coming into the VA anyway. And primary care providers can be, you know, great for connecting folks on to a number of different types of care, but be that mental health care or specialty health care as well. All right, so going on to, you know, what are some of the kinds of specifically gender affirming care that we offer? So there are some that folks may guess that we do, and there are some that folks may not necessarily think about. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about each of these in just a moment here. But one of the services that we offer is vocal coaching. We also offer hair reduction or removal through dermatology, prosthetics. So this may be something that as folks are testing out a physical transition or in the process of something like hormone therapy or seeking gender affirming surgery, but are not at that stage yet, they may use prosthetics to assist with their gender presentation or how they look to the world, how they present themselves to the world. I'm usually the one to help folks kind of through the process of name changes. That can include changes in the medical chart, as well as looking forward towards legal name changes if that's something that somebody's interested in. Hormone therapy is probably the biggest of the gender affirming services that we offer. We can also end up assisting somebody to receive or be assessed for a diagnosis of what is medically considered gender dysphoria. So that is, an experience that sometimes folks will have in the course of identifying with being gender nonconforming, non-binary, transgender, just anything other than the gender or the sex that they had assigned at birth and the gender that they may have been kind of just automatically associated with earlier in life. We unfortunately do not offer gender affirming surgery through the VA at this time. So that also means that we unfortunately don't provide financial support or kind of the insurance process for folks seeking that care in the community. However, our providers are qualified to provide letters of support for somebody who may be seeking gender affirming care. So they can go through, most of the time, surgeries in the community are going to require letters of support. So acknowledging that there's been an assessment of somebody's readiness, appropriateness, ability to go through the surgery process. And those letters our providers can provide. And I'll go into a little bit of detail there. We also have recently opened fertility services to qualifying LGBTQ plus veterans, and I'll get a little bit more into what I mean by qualifying. And we also have access to a national consult or kind of collaboration where if folks have questions about the care that they're receiving or what care they could receive, their providers can connect in with a national team and receive kind of other eyes on this, right? If this is a complex situation or we're not really sure whether something is appropriate or not, that's something that we can consult with other people across the nation on. So it's one of the advantages of the VA is that the VA is nationwide, right? So we have a lot of resources we can connect into. We're not limited just to what we can do here within our VA Maryland. All right, so I'm going to go into just a little bit more detail about some of these aspects of care here. And for folks who may have questions, again, please feel free to ask them in the chats. Rosalie, I believe that you have been instrumental in helping pass on those questions to me at a later time if we aren't able to answer them here today. And again, my contact information will be here at the end of the slides as well. I will share that so that folks can reach out to me directly if they're interested as well.
Let me just say that if anybody wants to comment, whether they're on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, we will automatically see it in the, and we will be able to answer you in real time.
Yeah, and that's, I think, a really exciting feature about this. All right. So going into a little bit more detail on gender affirming care. So vocal coaching. And so I know I may be preaching to the choir here for folks who may be well versed in the kinds of care that they're looking for. And there may be folks who are newer to this or who may just be here connecting as a provider or as somebody who's a family member of a veteran. So I'm going to describe a little bit about what these different services are about. So vocal coaching, somebody who is looking to physically transition or somebody who is just, not recognizing that they're experiencing what we might call kind of dysphoria related to their voice. So they don't sound the way that they want to. They maybe sound more masculine than they want to, or they sound more feminine than they want to. That can actually be something that folks are trained to make a change in. Now, there are some aspects of our voice that we can't always change, but there are some that we can, and that includes speech patterns as well as kind of the pitch or kind of vocal range that we're using when we speak just on an everyday basis. So we have providers, this is through technically what's called our speech pathology program, and we have trained providers who will work with folks to shift their voice more towards the direction that they want, whether that's masculinizing or feminizing. Now, within this program, usually folks will start with one-on-one therapy with the provider to start with, where they identify their goals and start to kind of learn these processes for making this change. Then down the line, this is followed up often by group therapy, where they're in a group with other folks who identify as transgender, gender nonconforming, who are going through this process of masculinization or feminization with their voice as well. So that's a place where they're both focusing on some of these skills and sometimes getting a little bit of support and community. Yeah, so vocal coaching, I think, is one that's a little bit lesser known, but it's a great resource that we have. And primarily, a lot of these services are going to be offered either in our Baltimore office or at our Perry Point office, because those are our two kind of main hubs where we have more specialty care. But some of these are people will also be able to access in kind of their local clinic if they go to one, or in our community-based outpatient clinics, or can be offered virtually. So vocal coaching is one of those that is, we have hubs in Baltimore and Perry Point, and we also offer these services virtually. Hair reduction or removal is unfortunately not virtual, although that may make sense as we get into it. So this happens in our dermatology department. And the type of hair removal or reduction that we offer is laser hair removal. So I say reduction or removal because sometimes it's not possible. This is in case-by-case individual basis. Sometimes it may not be possible to entirely remove hair, but can at least kind of reduce the thickness of the hair that's there. Now, sometimes folks will ask about electrolysis, which is a separate process that also engages in hair removal for certain types of hair in terms of fineness and color. Unfortunately, we are not able to offer electrolysis at this time, and this is not specific to our VA. Unfortunately, it's a question that the nationwide we've been grappling with recently in terms of how we can connect folks to providers who are kind of vetted through the VA. And so have certain credentials that we need to look for who do provide this service. It is something that we're working on, trying to improve access to this type of care. And in the meantime, it's often worth getting at least an evaluation done through our dermatology department to see if somebody may be a good candidate for laser hair removal, which we do offer. All right. Apologies, needed to sip some water there. Okay, so prosthetics, I mentioned this in a little bit of depth a minute ago. So gender affirming prosthetics can include things like binders for breasts, packers, and then breast forms for folks who are looking to kind of increase visible breast size. There's some information about prosthetics that's just open to the public, and even some examples of what these prosthetics can look like, although it's not limited to what's visible at these links. So this is something where folks don't really need a kind of medical clearance to have. It's something that any provider should be able to enter a consult for the prosthetics. There's a little bit of trickiness around. It's really helpful if folks already come in with an idea of what they're looking for. And there's some resources at some of these links for kind of how to size some of these things, because that will be something that our kind of prosthetics leads would be looking for, as they kind of already need to be able to have a specific thing to purchase. And so that's something that you can absolutely ask primary care in more depth about, or can reach out to myself too. And it's a process I'm happy to help guide folks through in terms of where to find more information or how to access this. Okay, and again, there's a wider range of prosthetics that I have listed here. Those are just some examples. So I mentioned earlier also name changes. So I myself, and typically your individual provider, cannot create a name change for somebody. But I am able to provide guidance on how to change somebody's name. In CPRS is the name of our medical record at this time. So it's fairly straightforward to add what's called a preferred name to somebody's chart. So that will mean that your birth name or your legal name appears first, and then in parentheses will be a preferred name. Now, folks can also use that for things like nicknames, and I see that all the time. And they can use this to make sure that the name that they go by, that they actually use, is included in the medical chart and is visible to all providers and anybody scheduling their appointments. Now, there's recently been an update to our medical chart so that if somebody does disclose their gender identity, that will be visible right at the top of their chart as well. So it makes things a little bit easier for communication around some of these questions with providers and making sure that veterans who are accessing services here are being called the name that they actually use. We can also provide guidance on legal name changes. So a lot of times there's kind of paperwork to submit. And I can also help connect folks to, there are resources in the community that do provide guidance on legal name changes as well. So somebody's full name cannot be entirely changed, and their birth sex cannot be erased from the medical chart unless they get a legal name change and go through additional steps. Typically, the birth sex remains in there, and there's some rationale for that in terms of if providers are treating somebody, it can sometimes be helpful to know what to expect about kind of hormone therapies or different organs, or kind of what screeners would be helpful to use for somebody. So making sure that if somebody needs a pap smear, that they're getting one for their health. That said, sometimes the legal name change can result in being able to completely change the name and not have record of the past legal name in the chart. But if you're not interested in or able to do a legal name change, I think having the preferred name be able to be changed is a great step as well. Hormone therapy. So there's a lot more information about this than I can provide as somebody who has a specialty in mental health, I will say. So I will just kind of note a little bit about what the referral process looks like. So for hormone therapy, we do offer both masculizing and feminizing hormone therapy. A lot of times someone will come in and set goals for what they are looking for in terms of physical appearance. Our referral process is typically a little bit different depending on what somebody's coming in with. And I'm happy to help navigate this process as well. So if somebody has already been meeting with a provider and has it documented in their chart that they meet a kind of diagnostic criteria for, again, this medical term that we have, gender dysphoria, or the past name for it is gender identity disorder. Some of our medical chart has a little bit of older information in it, so sometimes that diagnosis still appears. All of our providers are well up on kind of the newer diagnostic name and criteria. So if somebody doesn't yet have that documented in their chart, or if they may have complications in terms of health or mental health concerns, or questions about how to navigate kind of transitioning both physically and socially in their life, then we may first refer to somebody to our health psychology team, and they would engage in what's called a readiness evaluation. So they can do that evaluation for whether somebody does identify as transgender, whether they meet criteria for gender dysphoria, and can kind of check in on some of these complications for them and how that may impact their course of care. I am able to place these consults. Primary care providers and other mental health providers are also able to place these consults. So never hurts to ask. If somebody's like, I'm not sure if I can place that consult, they can come to me. Oh, I think you're muted. Sorry.
I'm so sorry. So I do have a question. Under hormone therapy, masculizing and feminizing hormone therapy, does that mean someone who may be in the middle of transition, but who moves into Maryland and becomes our patient, will we be able to continue their treatment? And similarly, will we be able, if someone comes to us saying they would like to start treatment, can we help them start treatment?
Great question. And so with this, I'm going to actually switch to the next slide as well. So sometimes there are folks who are coming into us who have already started treatment, either in the community or with another VA, or have otherwise already, been talking with a provider and been diagnosed with this gender dysphoria. And again, this is just kind of a technical medical term that we use when we're talking with somebody who's does not identify as the gender that would be kind of default associated with their birth sex. So I say that because sometimes I know it's kind of a little bit of a scary term, and not everybody who has this really experiences strong negative feelings about their physical presentation as is. So if somebody's already started hormone therapy and they're looking to transfer care to us, we may be able to refer them directly to our endocrinology team, who actually do the therapy, the hormone therapy itself. Usually it's helpful if folks can provide a copy of their medical records if they've been seeing folks in the community. So we have that full information about what they've tried already, what dosages they've been on, and all of that. If somebody's coming through the VA system, we already have access to that, and that's great. Similarly, so that said, if somebody is entirely new to this process, and I actually just got off the phone with a veteran before joining the stream today, who is entirely new to the process, they can do something if they choose, like getting an evaluation done with Planned Parenthood or a group in the community first and bringing that medical record to us, or they could do that process through us. Now, technically, our primary care providers are able to, they are qualified to make that diagnosis. However, not all of them necessarily feel comfortable doing so, or may still feel like there's a benefit to somebody speaking with our health psychology team to do a more full discussion of, all right, how is this going to impact your life? Have you been able to think through that? Where are your sources of support? What do you want this to look like for you if you're new to this? Like, how can we help provide resources to you to further explore this as you're looking at engaging with this physical transition, this hormone therapy process? And not everybody goes through any one of these processes. So somebody may be transgender, gender nonconforming, and not be interested in physically transitioning or not be interested in changing their voice, and that's okay. I like that you echoed the language of masculinizing and feminizing hormone therapy here as well, because we don't want to just say, hey, this is, hormone therapy for you to look male or to look female, because those aren't the only goals that somebody may have, right? There are folks who may identify somewhere kind of in between, or all kinds of things that you may not be looking to look stereotypically feminine at the end of this process, and that's okay. So we name those hormones based on kind of their effects and how much they mimic the hormone levels that may be found in somebody who is a cisgender female or cisgender male. So thank you again for asking that question there about kind of how folks get connected and who we can help with this. Mm-hmm. All right. So I mentioned before as well that unfortunately we do not offer gender affirming surgery through the VA or cover that through our care in the community system. But so I have a list of providers in the community who do offer gender affirming surgery and can sometimes help folks get that information. And also our providers here within the VA are able to and qualified to offer letters of support and evaluation for somebody's readiness or ability to engage in surgery. So usually if folks are looking in this direction, I encourage them to either reach out to me if they have questions about providers in the community, or to, as they've done their own research, to reach out to that facility or that surgical team first before kind of seeking the letters through us, because every facility and every surgical team is going to have a little bit of different approaches to their requirements. So some require multiple letters, some require letters from particular providers. So some say, okay, we need at least one mental health provider. Not all of them say that. Some say, hey, we need 2 mental health providers. One needs to be somebody who has not seen you in another capacity. So if you're seeing a counselor or a therapist, let's say for couples therapy or to help manage depression, that is excellent. I'm glad that is the case. And that provider may not be the only one who is able to kind of write a letter for you or is allowed to write a letter for you. So we do have, again, our health psychology team are folks who can provide purely kind of just these letters and evaluations as well. So again, everybody has a little bit of a different requirement, and it can help for you to already be in touch with those facilities about what that requirement is. Sometimes I have a sense of this from having communicated with these facilities or surgical teams myself, and sometimes that information updates as well. So we are also happy and have in the past had kind of team communication with some providers in the community, as long as there are, we have explicit permission from a veteran to do so. We can communicate with some of these teams to help streamline care as well.
I have another question. It says
yes.
VA does not offer or cover through care in the community gender affirming surgeries at this time. Is that expected to change? And since it doesn't support the surgery in the community, then aside from the surgery, is VA there for everything else?
Good question. So I'm going to answer the second one first. So yes, aside from the surgery, VA is here for everything else. So these other kind of offerings that I've put on the slides here. We also offer mental health care support, and that's, we don't have a specific kind of gender affirming care team, but we have many providers who are trained to work with LGBTQ plus veterans. Yes. So on when we talk about not providing support, what I mean by that is that we don't provide kind of financial coverage. So for other services that veterans may be seeking from us, if our facility does not offer a service, we are sometimes able to connect somebody to something in the community, but the payment happens the way that it would through the VA, and the VA gets reimbursement later. So, or provides reimbursement later, I should say. So that's something that unfortunately we cannot do for gender affirming surgery at this time. We do cover, if there are complications that have happened through the surgery, the VA does provide coverage for that care. And there's a little bit of ambiguity in the language for that care. So if somebody has a question about what's covered or not, please feel free to reach out. Okay, so then your first question there, is this expected to change? This is a very large unknown right now, and it's something that there has been a lot of push across the last year in particular, and there had been some statements made higher up in VA leadership about trying to have this process occur, but there being some complications. So it's not something that I have any kind of concrete information about right now or concrete timeline on. This may also be something that may change in terms of what is prioritized or what is sought or able to be sought at higher levels as we look at kind of administration changes that may happen at national level within the next couple of months. So it is something that if we do see a change here, I will be happily shouting from the rooftops about it and kind of sharing this information. And it's unfortunately something that I guess my gut instinct would be to ask folks not to bank on that for right now. So if somebody's interested in the surgery and they want it imminently, it's not something that they would likely be able to look to the VA to provide, unfortunately. But there are folks who are absolutely kind of pushing for and seeking this form of care for veterans. So again, thank you for the question there. Did I miss anything in the questions you'd asked?
No, I think the goal is to explain to veterans who are LGBT and their family members what is available to them here at the VA. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And again, I know this isn't going to speak to all specific cases, so I do encourage folks to absolutely reach out to me. And again, doing so via the comments on this video are a great way of doing that, or reaching out to me directly as well. Okay, so I think the last thing that I wanted to cover there is fertility services. So there has been a recent change to this and some things that have not changed. So fertility services through the VA were previously only open to married heterosexual veterans. Those services have now opened to single veterans. So if anybody's not LGBT plus, but maybe single and looking for fertility services, you may be in luck. We are also opening to LGBT plus veterans. So that includes folks who may be in non-heterosexual relationships, or again, who may be single. The caveat to that is that fertility services have historically been and continue to be open only for veterans who have what is called a service-connected condition. So whose infertility is related to a condition that occurred while they were in service. So this too can get a little bit complicated in terms of what we mean by that. So if somebody's interested in fertility services, I do still encourage them, if they're not sure whether they qualify under this, to reach out to primary care providers and get a consult in place. So we actually have a dedicated team of providers who meet monthly to discuss folks' cases and kind of look on this case-by-case individual basis whether somebody may qualify for fertility services. So that can include kind of a wide range of services. Again, I'm not the most familiar with those, so I'm happy to also help connect folks in or ask questions on their behalf of the providers who do know. But we just wanted to share that because that's been a recent change, that it's now open to LGBTQ plus veterans. Okay, Briefly, I just also wanted to note that one of the things that I do is help folks to seek out and connect in with community resources as well, and that can include community that is veteran and LGBTQ plus specific, and then also just some transgender or LGBTQ plus specific here in the community. So there's a couple of resources listed here. This is not the end all be all. And of course, folks can do this research themselves often. And this is something that I'm happy to help connect folks with as well, particularly for some of the kinds of community that we may not provide. So we often don't have an actively running group for LGBTQ plus veterans. We are working on changing that. And in the meantime, often folks are looking for a sense of community. So I'm able to help talk with folks what are some options there. All right. So I think that is what I've got for us today. And I did just want to note, so there is a public website that has a little bit of information about LGBTQ plus care through the VA. It's not necessarily site specific, although we offer pretty much all of what other VA facilities offer too. For the specifics, folks are welcome to reach out to me, and both my email address and my phone number are listed there on the slide. I will also just say them out loud because I know the email address at least is a little bit difficult to see. So it's just my first name dot last name at va.gov. So KATHERINE.GREIN at va.gov. And then my VA line is 443-500-9052. And folks are welcome to use either of those. Sometimes I'm not available to answer my phone because my other role here in the VA is as a psychologist, and I am frequently seeing folks for sessions. So I may not be able to pick up, but if somebody leaves a voicemail with their name and information in it, I'm happy to get back to them. And email is also a great way if we're not really on the same timeline in order to respond. It's a great way to get hold of me as well.
Katherine, do you want to talk about how every year we participate in the Pride Parade, and maybe people who might be interested in that could email you with just Pride Parade or outreach? So this way we can have a strong showing at the next parade.
Sure. Yeah. So every year for the past couple of years, we've had presences at a couple of different prides throughout Maryland. So this past year we were in Baltimore, Annapolis in June, and then Howard County and Harford County in October. And some of those are large events. So Baltimore is a pretty big pride. And then the others are a little bit smaller, but great ways to kind of connect in with the community. So typically the way that we've done this is that we'll have a booth set up with information to provide to veterans. So we've usually kind of staffed that with our staff and who can kind of answer questions about the types of care. And when we provide information, not just about LGBTQ plus care, but also about how to connect in and sign up for VA care to start with. Our suicide prevention team, they have the best, what we call swag. So they've got stress balls, handkerchiefs. We had fans this year. It was excellent. So far we haven't really had specifically like a calling out to veterans to help with this. But it is always great to see veterans show up, and that's a great place for them to get some kind of one-on-one or FaceTime with, usually I'm there directly. And if I'm not, we have other providers who can help connect to me or who are experts in their own areas as well. So that can be a great place to get some of this face-to-face time to ask questions. We are looking at potentially making changes. Again, I'm not sure what may happen in terms of what funding may be available for us to attend some of these events in the coming year. With some of the changes to administration coming in, and there's always some question about that. But what we may hope to do is participate actually in the parade, at least for Baltimore this year. And that we may absolutely be welcoming veterans to participate if we can find a truck. I've been told that there are people who have plenty of trucks who would be happy to lend them. So we're going to investigate kind of what that process would look like, or also if we're able to host something like a parade or walk on our own campuses. If so, that may be up at Perry Point because we've got a very walkable campus up there. And it doesn't involve needing to kind of block off city streets to do that. And then that would also absolutely be something that we welcome veterans to show up to, whether they're LGBTQ plus or not, or just kind of want to show some support. But so, yeah, we're going to be hoping within the next couple of months here to really get some more information out there for veterans. And in the meantime, they are more than welcome to contact me. With a that's a great idea. I think that you had of just, in the email title, just say something about, Pride or VA Pride. When we learn more, I'll respond in the moment, but I'll also kind of keep that running list of folks who may be interested and be able to reach back out to them as we get some more information about what participation can look like. It's always also great to hear from folks in terms of whether they might be, willing to also serve as a point of connection or community for our other veterans who may be kind of newer to the process of navigating an identity or newer to our community.
Okay, well, that's everything we wanted to know about LGBTQ plus services at the VA and how people can get in access with them and how people can get in touch with you. I posted your number so it appears in the Chiron of each of our sites, our social media sites. So is there anything, what's the most important thing that you want veterans who are LGBTQ plus to know about VA services?
Yeah, I think that this is a very broad statement, but I think that just that we are absolutely welcoming of LGBTQ plus veterans. I think the kind of tagline on our overall program is "We serve all who served," and I want folks to feel welcome. And what I mean by that is both that I want them to feel like they can show up, that they can ask about and access VA services. And that may include, too, if they were discharged dishonorably or other than honorable as a result of their identity, there are processes to have that investigated and changed. But I also mean that in terms of if somebody is accessing our services and they are feeling not welcome for whatever reason, to please reach out, let a trusted provider know, let me know, because that's something that we are always striving to do better. And sometimes we need to be deliberate about doing that. And we can't do that if we don't know what's going on. So.
Yeah, that's true. We cannot solve a problem that we don't know exists.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take this down.
Okay.
And I want to thank you for spending your time with us. Anyone out there watching, if you really have some more questions for Dr. Grein, you could just call that number that I placed out there. If you're LGBTQ and having trouble, talking to your providers, then she could sort of help with that. And anything else that LGBTQ veterans might need to be on a journey toward health. So thank you very much for listening in, and we'll see you on our next stream.
Yes, thank you so much for listening in. It was great to be here, and thank you so much for having me here on our websites here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And all those who are watching, will be gone again tomorrow morning. We are going to be discussing the importance of using antibiotics properly. All right. Well, bye, everyone.